episode 96 of the Noble Character Crafts podcast. My name is Amy, and I am coming to you from eastern Nebraska, where I live with my husband and our 5 children. Today is Monday, June 29th, 2020. A huge welcome to any new or returning viewers. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that you really enjoyed this episode. This is a podcast all about my crafty life, and today I have crocheting and knitting to share with you all. You can find me online on Instagram and Etsy at Noble Character Crafts, and you can get in contact with me through my email at noblecharactercrafts@yahoo.com. I have to admit, I have not been very good at checking that email account lately. There were a few messages that I missed from a couple of episodes ago. I did reply to those individuals, but my apologies for not being better at checking that email. I'm going to try to do a better job at checking that email more regularly. In case you do have any questions, you can certainly try to get a hold of me there. I will have notes for this episode, as well as links to the places that you can find me in the description box below. I am currently hosting a make-along over on Instagram. It is called Make 9 2020 Mal, and that is for you to join in on the Make 9 challenge, where you choose 9 projects that you would like to make within the year 2020 and post a grid on Instagram showing us those projects. And then anytime that you work on those projects or finish anything, you can post a picture on Instagram with that hashtag Make 9 2020 Mal, and you will be entered to win a prize, which I am drawing periodically throughout the year. This is a year-long knit-along, or make-along I should say. Any craft is included. So if there are multiple different crafts that you would like to try out, please feel free to include those on your board. It's not too late to join in, even though we're already halfway through the year. You can continue to work on those projects, and you can continue to join in if you haven't yet. So please feel free to continue to join in on that make-along. Any whips are also included. You can include any whips that you have outstanding that you would like to finish up this year. That is perfectly fine as well. And you are not required to finish anything for this make-along. It's just a participatory make-along where we're enjoying seeing what people are hoping to work on this year and then seeing how they're progressing through those projects. So I hope that you all will join in if you haven't already, and thank you so much to everybody who has already joined in. It's so much fun to see all of the different projects that everybody has been working on. So I am so excited that I have a stack of finished objects to share with you all. I surprised myself in being able to finish up some of these projects a little bit quicker than what I had thought. So I'm going to go in the order of which one I started first, and the first one that I started is this granny square Scrappy blanket that I made using up a bunch of worsted weight 100% cotton scraps that I had left over, mainly from dishcloths that I have made, and I wanted to use up my little bits of scraps to make a blanket. And I was able to finish this. I've been working pretty consistently on it every day, and I'm so excited I was able to finish this project. I'll stand up in a bit so you can see it in its entirety, but just so I can talk through a little bit what I did. I just did a standard granny square. I will put notes to what I did exactly in the description box below if you would like to know. I used an H5mm hook, and I just changed colors for each round. And so I just did the first round and the second round in the scrap yarn. And then for the third round and the joining round, being one and the same, the third round is the joining round, I used Lily Sugar and Cream in the soft Ecru colorway. And I love how this turned out. I joined as I went along, so I joined as I crocheted along. And I crocheted over all the ends as much as possible. So that was really easy to work up. Whenever I make a granny square blanket or any kind of a pieced blanket, I really like looking at how the design shows in between the squares. So you can see this is a square, but in between each of these 4 squares, there's this beautiful circular pattern, and then it's got these little, I don't know, I just like looking at like the background shapes and what forms in between the squares. Do you know what I mean? I think it looks so cool. Anyway, I ended up making this 13 squares wide by 16 squares long. And then I decided to finish it off with my I think my favorite kind of a border, which is a scalloped border. Maybe I should put this shade down. I feel like it's really, oh, that's much better, isn't it? Okay, so this is just one of my favorite types of borders, is a scalloped border. I think it looks so cute, and I thought it was very fitting for this granny square blanket. So I had to do it a little bit differently for this one just because I had an uneven number of squares across. It wasn't going to work out to do it in the traditional way where I would normally do my scallops in the spaces in between the clusters from the previous round. Instead, I did 9 double crochets on each corner, and then I did a single crochet in the next space in between clusters. But then the next cluster I had to do in the middle of the next cluster, and that's a cluster of 7 double crochets. Again, I did a single crochet in the next space, and then I did another cluster of 7 double crochets in the space between the squares. Right here you can see. So that worked out pretty well. I think it's a little bit, I don't know, it doesn't lay perfectly flat probably. There's probably too many scallops around. It would probably lay better if I had the scallops spaced out a little bit more, but this was just the easiest way that I could come up with to make them evenly spaced across the edge. So I'm happy with it. And this is just going to be a family throw blanket for us. And so it doesn't have to be perfect, but I'm really, really happy with how it turned out. I love the colors in it. I love how it's just such a nice blanket. I love it's got such a weight to it. Having this worsted weight cotton yarn just really adds a weight to the blanket, which, as you probably know, there's so many, you know, there's a lot of weighted blankets out there nowadays that you can buy. And this really kind of has its own weight to it that's just so comforting to lay under. And yet the coolness of the cotton is great. It doesn't make it too hot, I don't think. So I just think this is going to be such a nice blanket to have, and it's so cheerful. So I'll go ahead and stand up so that you can see it in its entirety. So you can see it's not a huge blanket. I didn't measure the inches, but I will measure it and put that down below. I'm not sure how big it is, but it's a nice throw. If I have it on my lap, it covers my feet, so that's perfect for sitting on the couch watching a movie or something and cuddling underneath it. My daughter and I were snuggled up underneath it last night while I was doing the border, and it worked really well to cover both of us. So I am just so happy with this. I think it's just lovely. It worked up really quickly. Last time I showed this on the last podcast, I only had 10 by 10 squares done. And so I'm really, really happy with how I was able to work on this and get it done pretty quickly for a blanket, I think. So I'm so happy with it. I used a total of 754.5 grams of the border color. So that was for joining all of the squares together and the scallop. And then I also did use that same color for the center of some of the squares as well. I don't know if you can tell that. I did do a bit of a pattern with the squares. So every other square I used a very light neutral color for the center because I had a lot of that, you know, the lighter colored yarn that I needed to use up, but I didn't want to use that for the second round because I thought it would just blend into the joining round too much. So I just decided to follow a bit of a pattern where the lighter, every other square is a really light neutral center. So, and then every other one has a more colorful center, basically. So I'm really so pleased with being able to make this and being able to use up all of those little scraps of worsted weight yarn. I had a ton left over from a bunch of dishcloths that I had made, and I'm so happy that I was able to use up so many of those scraps and make such a pretty blanket. So I started this blanket back in November of last year, and I have 4 other Scrappy blankets that are in the works, and they're all much older than this one. But I'm glad I was able to get this one done at least pretty quickly, so yay! All right, my next finished object let's see, like I said, I was going to go in the order of how I started them. The next object I have to share with you are my diamond back socks. This is a beautiful pattern by Kay Litton, who is from Crazy Sock Lady Designs, and she has the Crazy Sock Lady podcast. And I knit these along with her Summer Sock Camp 2020 that she is hosting right now. And these socks I knit using DPNs, which is the first time I've ever made socks using DPNs, and they went really, really well. It went so much better than I thought it would because I have had so much trouble with ladders when I have knit with DPNs in the past. So if you're not familiar with what ladders are, that's when when you're joining your two needles together, you get a big space in between the needles. But I was able to make these and I didn't have any problems with laddering. So I'm so pleased that I have been able to make these using DPNs and kind of conquer that skill because I really didn't think that I was I didn't have confidence using DPNs, I should just say, before knitting these, and now I do have more confidence that I can use DPNs if I need to. I used a sock blank for these socks, which was the first time I had ever done that as well. This was a sock blank from Hand Knit by Kate, and it is in the colorway Abby or Abby. It's spelled A-B-I, and I really enjoyed knitting with the sock blank. So for this pattern, I used US 1 2.25 millimeter needles. These are knit cuff down. I started off with a 1x1 cuff, which is a modification from the original pattern, but I was following Kay's tutorial for knitting with DPNs, and she instructs you to do a 1x1 rib. So I had started off these socks before I had picked out the pattern that I wanted to make. And so anyway, that's why I did a different cuff. So I did 20 rows of the 1x1 rib. And then I followed the pattern for the leg, and there's 4 repeats of the pattern for the leg, which gives a nice long sock, which I love, and a slip stitch heel flap and gusset. And then I did add a modification to the sole of the foot. I added a bit of a slip stitch detail right at the ball of my foot because that is where I typically wear a hole in my sock most quickly. So I'm just trying this out for the first time to add a little, there's 30 rows of a slip stitch section on the sole of the foot, and I'm hopeful that that will give me a little bit more, a little bit more wear to my socks having that there. The pattern includes a rounded toe, which is my favorite as well, and I just really love how these turned out. They're definitely not matching, but I think they're super cool anyway. Kind of reminds me of like a tie-dye look or something like that. I'll take this off the blocker so you can see the pattern a bit better because it's a beautiful pattern that runs down the front. I thought that the colors in this and since I was doing the summer sock camp and I wanted to do one of Kay's patterns since she's hosting it, and this is the diamond back pattern, so it has these diamonds. Maybe, whoops, I dropped one of the sock blockers, which by the way are from Perfectly Catchy Designs, and you can find them on eBay. Maybe you can see the pattern a bit better on the lighter, I'm not sure. This yarn is probably not the best choice for this pattern just because it's a bit harder to see the texture with the variegation of the yarn, but anyway, it just has a really beautiful diamond texture, which is lovely. It was really fun to work up. It's a 24 row repeat for this pattern. So I did have to keep the pattern with me and keep track of which row I was on, but I absolutely love them. They're just plain on the back, which kind of gives you a nice break from the patterning. But I'm so pleased with these. I did wet block these, which I don't typically do with my socks, but since I had used the sock blank, the yarn was all crinkled up and I wanted to, get them to be laying more flat and everything to have them, nicely finished. So anyway, I'm super happy with how these turned out. I love them. And I'm so pleased that I was able to, do 2 new things using a sock blank and using DPNs for the first time. I made the medium size, which is a 64 stitch count sock. I think that is all I have to say for those. I do have a little mini left over from that sock blank that I wound up. I actually soaked this yesterday because I don't know, I just wanted to see if the kinks would come out of it after soaking it. I soaked it for like an hour, but still you can kind of see there that it's still crinkly. I mean, it's a lot less crinkly than it was when I first wound it up. The skein, if you stretched it, it was really long, but it just kind of bounced back into a tiny little hank like this big. Anyway, I really like how this looks even in the skein. It's kind of a fun combination of colors. My next finished object is this beautiful shawl that I knit. This is a new design that is still unnamed from Molly Klein Design. And I think it should be released pretty soon, but I don't have a word on when that will be exactly. Last time I showed this, now I can't remember which way is which. I think this is the beginning side. Anyway, I was about right in here, this area kind of. It's knit from side to side. And I was about in this area, I think, last time I recorded. This is knit using DK weight yarn. I used my own hand-dyed yarn on 75% superwash merino, 25% nylon base. And this is my colorway Vineyard from when I sold my yarn, but I no longer sell my yarn. I use the recommended needle size, which is US 7 4.5 millimeter needles. And yeah, it's just really beautiful lace pattern along the edge. I used 3 skeins of DK weight yarn, and I actually did modify the pattern a little bit in that once I got to the center, I weighed my yarn and just added a few, 16 actuals, I added 16 rows of knitting without increasing or decreasing. And I just kept track of how much yarn I had left so that I would be able to use up as much yarn as possible. I was pretty successful with that. I only had this little tiny ball of yarn left over, so I was happy to be able to use up as much yarn as possible for this. But you know, if you're a little bit leery, I think 3 skeins is plenty to do just to follow the pattern perfectly. But I just decided to add a little bit of extra length to it just to use up as much yarn as possible. So anyway, you just get to that center section and then you start decreasing. So it's a pretty simple design. It was easily memorizable and made it super mindless to work on. And yeah, I'm really happy with it. The only issue that I have with this is that this top edge has a little bit of a garter ridge to it, just a skinny garter ridge. And even after wet blocking and pinning it, I'm having trouble with it rolling. It kind of rolls down quite a bit. It tends to double over. So that is a little bit frustrating. I wish I could get that to lay flat. If anybody has any tips for me on how I could get that to work better, like I said, I wet blocked it and laid it flat and pinned it until it was dry, and you know, it was laying so nice and flat on the blocking mats. But as soon as I took it off of the blocking mats, it did that. I mean, it's not a huge deal because I will probably be wearing it like this usually. It fits really nicely, doesn't it? It's, you know, it's got a nice length to it, I think. It's almost more like a scarf, really, because it's so thin and long. But I really like it a lot. And then the way when you wear it like this, the lace area just shows off so beautifully. So anyway, this top edge doesn't really matter when you're wearing it like this anyway, because it kind of all gets bunched up, so it's not that big of a deal. It is a really nice fit to wear over the shoulders too. Just the way it's a crescent shape, so it sits really nicely over the shoulders. And then you can see that top edge. I mean, it doesn't look bad, right? Rolled under like that, but it kind of bothers me. I just kind of wish I could get it to lay flat. If I play around with it, I can kind of get it, not really. It just flips under automatically. It's okay, I guess. Anyway, I really love that lace. I think it's so beautiful. So I'm really, really happy with this overall. But if anybody does have any tips for that edge, I would love to hear your advice on what I could do to get that to lay a bit flatter. It worked up really quickly though because of the DK weight yarn, and it's not an overly huge shawl, so, and the simple design was so nice I could work on this all the time without, you know, losing track of where I was. It was really easy to tell where I was in the pattern too, in case I did forget which row I was on, but it's only a 4-row repeat for the pattern, so super easy and really enjoyable to knit. It was just such a peaceful knit, I felt like. I have 2 more little finished objects. Since I finished my granny square blanket, I decided to start making a few dishcloths using up the very last bits of scraps that I have from my cotton stash. And so I was able to work up a couple of dishcloths super quickly. I just started this one last night and finished it. We went over to a friend's house and sat out on their deck, and I took this along with me, which is just the perfect project to have in the summertime. Working on a tiny little dishcloth and cotton yarn is perfect even out in this hot weather that we've been having here. Anyway, I just did a simple dishcloth. I use the pattern, which is called Grandmother's Favorite Dishcloth. I will link to that down below. I do modify the pattern a little bit in that I use US 6 4mm needles, and I increase to 52 stitches before I decrease. So that's a little bit larger than what the pattern calls for, but I think I'm using a smaller needle than what the pattern calls for. So I really like how this one worked up. I am just randomly throwing in colors. I mean, I tried to find some colors that I thought looked nice together for this one, but I really like working on these scrappy dishcloths. They're super fun. And here is the second one that I've made. So I like how those colors go together as well. So I've laid out all of the little tiny bits of scraps that I have, and I've put them into little groups of, you know, color coordinating colors that go together well to make some more dishcloths. So I have enough to make, I think, about 6 more or something like that. So that's a super fun and easy project. Like I said, it's perfect for summer on-the-go knitting. Okay, so now on to my works in progress. The first one I have in this me-made Scrappy bag that I put together. And I transferred this project to this bag because it was getting too big for the other project bag I had it in. This is from my personal Make 9 list, which I'm slowly working through. This is the 3rd project from my Make 9 list. I have 2 Make 9 boards, one for my personal projects and then one that's a gift knitting list. And I've done better with the gift projects. But anyway, my personal list is has been neglected. But anyway, this is the Outline Shawl, which is a free pattern by Beta Jizik, who is of Hedgehog Fibers. And I am using up scraps for this project as well. So this is I'm holding a fingering weight yarn scrap together with a lace weight kid mohair silk blend yarn that is just bare, undyed. And I'm really loving how this is working out. I haven't given this project very much attention since I recorded a podcast last, but it's still coming along. So I kind of made a gradient of colors in, kind of a rainbow gradient. So I started with my pink colors, and then I realized that I had way too much yarn held aside for this project and it was going to be way too big. So my pink section is a lot bigger than the other colored sections, but that's okay. So anyway, I just worked into some oranges and some golden yellows, lighter yellows into greens, kind of some turquoises, and I'm now into more of the blue colors. There is a progress keeper right here that is marking where I was last time I recorded. So I've made a few inches of progress there, which is great. I'm using the recommended needle size, which are US 6 4mm needles. All of the needles that I use are Chaogu red lace. They're my favorite. Those are really all I have, except for the cotton. For my cotton yarn, when I make the dishcloths, I use wooden needles because I think it's a bit easier to use wooden needles for when working with cotton yarn. But anyway, otherwise I always use Chaogu needles. Anyway, this is just working up really lovely. I just really love working on it. It's also a mindless project. It's only a 2-row repeat, so it's super easy to memorize. And I just have the extra balls in this little Ziploc bag. So you can see the other colors that I'll be adding in. We've got a few more blues and then some purples. So there's not much to go. These are all that I have left. And there's even this big one here. It's a bit bigger. I'm probably not going to put in all of that one because I don't want this to be too huge. So anyway, it's nearing the end. The end is in sight for this project, but I'm really loving working on it whenever I feel the need. It's another great one that, I can take with me, but the mohair, of course, is warm, so it's not as easy to take with me in the summer, if I'm going outside or anything like that. But inside we have air conditioning, and so I'm able to work on it and be very comfortable still. So that's great. My next work in progress is in this beautiful bag that I received in a swap from Mary Ann of Rock Islander. She made this specifically just for me with my favorite colors and things like that. I love it so much. And this is a totally random new project that I just saw it online. I've been really enjoying the Love Crafts website for searching for patterns. And anyway, so I was on that website looking through their patterns, and I forget what I was looking for, but I just came across this pattern and I fell in love with it, and I thought of a yarn that I could possibly use for this project that I've had in my stash for such a long time and I've not known what to make with it. Anyway, I came across this beautiful crocheted top. It's called the Ripple in the Stream Shell, and the designer is Doris Chan. And as you can see there, it's a design that was released by Taki Yarns. I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce it. But anyway, I have had this yarn that I won on Instagram. I'm guessing back in 2016, maybe. I'm not sure. I tried to look back on Instagram to see if I could figure out when I won this, but I couldn't find the post of when I had won this. But anyway, I am so excited to finally be using this up. This is from We Are Knitters. It's called the Cotton Wool. It's 100% Peruvian Pima cotton. I have 4 skeins of this, or balls of this, I think. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I have 4 total. It's in the colorway light gray, and it's a beautiful yarn. It's listed as a worsted weight yarn, but it's really a light worsted weight. It's got 232 yards for 100 grams. This pattern calls for a DK weight yarn, but I thought I could get by with it. I decided to make if it doesn't really tell you how the fit should be. A lot of times when you get a pattern, it says, it's designed to be worn with so much positive ease. This pattern does not give you that information, but as you can see on the model, it's intended to be worn, I think, with a bit of positive ease. I would guess about 4 inches maybe. And so I decided to just make the bust measurement that fits my bust perfectly. And since I'm making it with a bit of a thicker yarn, I'm hoping that I'll get a good fit. I did not do a gauge swatch because I couldn't figure out how to do a gauge swatch. I've not made very many crocheted tops. I've been crocheting for a lot longer than I've been knitting, but I've made a lot more knitted garments than I have crocheted. I think I've only made one other true crocheted garment. I did make a cocoon wrap a long time ago, but that's basically just a square or a rectangle, and then you kind of seam up the sleeves, and it's just an oversized wrap that you wear. And then I did make a sweater, a long sleeve sweater, but I never wore it. I did not care for it at all. I ended up gifting it away. So anyway, I don't have a ton of experience with crocheting garments or even gauge swatching with crochet, honestly. I never even heard of gauge swatching, I don't think, until I started knitting, I think. And I've only been knitting since 2017. So anyway, this calls for you to do a gauge swatch with the lace pattern. I just couldn't figure out how to do it because this is made in the round, and I just figured I'm just going to start the project and I'll kind of get a gauge swatch as I go, and hopefully it'll be okay. I'm using the recommended hook size, which is a G 4mm crochet hook. Anyway, I'm really enjoying working on this project. It is so addictive. I love it so much. And here, I'll try it on for you so you can kind of see how the fit is. I think it's okay. It's kind of hard to tell right now, but it's definitely got a looser fit to it, right? I think I like it. I love the neckline. It's I've got that's the joining part right there. So it'd go more like this, I suppose. Anyway, the neckline is super pretty. You start with what did she call it? A foundation single crochet stitch. And that just makes it such a nice finish there, I think. And then you just go right into this beautiful shell pattern, which is so easy and fun. I really love it. It's so much fun to work on. Isn't it pretty? I think it's so pretty already. So anyway, I'm excited about this. I'm so excited about this. I wanted to stay focused on my make mine list, but I just got off track because I wanted to make it. It's okay though. I'm using a clover hook, which have become my favorite. So I'm really enjoying working with that as well. So I guess that's all I have to say about this, but I'm loving it so much. And I'm just so pleased to finally be using this yarn from my stash. It's got such a nice, the yarn is really nice. It's got a nice twist to it. It's really a round yarn and it's very, very soft. I love it. I like that it's made top down in the round. That's my favorite type of construction for knitted garments anyway, and it's really nice to have that in a crocheted garment as well. Yeah, so this is just a round yoke right now. It's really pretty in the round like that. It's like a huge doily at this point. I love it. And this nice neutral color, I think it's going to be beautiful over dresses or things like that. So I'm excited about that one. I think it'll work up pretty quickly. So I have 2 more works in progress. The first one was another random new project. My youngest son, who is 6, has for a few months now, I think it's just so random, that he really wants to make a blanket for his cousins. So my husband's brother, one of his brothers, has 4 young daughters, and we don't get to see them very often because they live out in North Carolina. But for some reason, my son has really wanted to make his cousins, he says, that he wants to make his cousins a blanket. So again, he had been asking me to, he'd been talking about wanting to make them a blanket for a long time. And anyway, I forget when, maybe a week ago, it doesn't really matter, he said, Mom, well, I was working on my granny square blanket, and he wanted, you know, every once in a while my kids want to come in and have me help them try to knit or crochet. It's never very successful, but we try. And anyway, he wanted to do that again, and it ended up that, you know, he'll do a couple of stitches and then he gives it back to me and wants me to work on it, which is fine because it takes a lot of patience to teach kids to knit or crochet, I think. Anyway, so I was working on this just tiny little sample of a granny square showing him how to do it. And he said, let's make this into a blanket for my cousins. And I said, well, I want to use this yarn for the blanket that I'm making, you know, because I wanted the yarn to go into I wasn't nearly done yet with the granny square blanket. And so I said, let's go pick out some different yarn. I've got a whole huge tote of my old stash down in the basement. I said, let's go down to the basement and pick out some yarn from that tote that I have all this yarn in. So he went down there, and I was surprised by the colors that he chose. He chose tons of neutral colors. And so I'll show you, but grays, blacks, tans, brown, and then one of this burgundy color. And so the colors just go really well together. It's a nice neutral color palette. So I was impressed. I thought it was a really good choice. So I'm going to make this big enough to be kind of a family blanket for them. And I just decided to do a simple granny square and go around and around, which is so relaxing to work on. I am changing colors every round, and either my son, the one that's wanted to start it, or one of my other children have been picking out the next color for every row. So it's completely random, and I do try to have about a 3-row space between repeating a color. So, you know, I don't want to have the same color repeated right after another. So if they grab a yarn, I say, pick a new color for me, guys. And if they pick a color that I've just done, I say, okay, I'll save that and do that next or whatever, but pick another one. But otherwise, you know, they're picking out what color comes next. I just try to do a little bit of management there, but not a ton. Anyway, again, super simple granny square for this. I really love how it's turning out. I think it's great. So my brother-in-law, whose family this is going to be going to, is a big guy. He's 6'6". So I want to make this a nice big, I think I'll make it at least 6 feet long and wide. You know, it's a square. So it's going to be a really big blanket, but I have a ton of yarn that I can use up for this, and it's such a good stash buster for that, because I just have a ton of this. It's all worsted weight, 100% acrylic yarn that I've had forever. The only exception to that is I am using one bulky weight yarn, which is this Lion brand Tweed Stripes in the caramel colorway. This is a bulky weight yarn, but I really don't think it makes much of a difference. You can tell when you look closely that it's a bit bigger, but some of the other yarns I'm using are worsted weight, and they even vary, you know, one worsted weight brand to another can vary quite a bit as well. So the different colors that I'm using are, I have Red Heart Super Saver in Aran Fleck, which is here, in Gray Heather, I think it's called. And I've used up all of the one that I had for that, but it's just this light gray color right here. And also the burgundy is called Claret from Red Heart Super Saver. Then I have Mainstays Basic Soft Gray Heather, which is definitely, I would not call this a soft gray heather. It's more of a tan color, but that's what it's called. I have Vanna's Choice in the, here it is, in the dark gray heather. I have a lot of gray heathers going into this, but this is a really dark charcoal color. I have the Lion brand Tweed Stripes, which I already showed you. I have Karen's Simply Soft Party in Black Sparkle. This skein's almost done, but I have more of it. So this is just a plain black, and then it's got this pretty sparkle throughout it, which is like a black sparkle as well. It's got some lint on it, but anyway, that's going into it. And then I have 3 colorways of Lion brand Heartland. I have Great Smoky Mountains, which this is the last of the gray that I have. So like I said, I had the gray heather from the Red Heart Super Saver, and then I have this one skein, and that's all the gray that I have. I have Black Canyon, also Lion brand Heartland, and I have, what other one? Oh, Sequoia, which is this beautiful brown color. So those are all of the yarns that I have going into this, which is quite a bit. But like I said, I have multiple skeins of most of these. So I'll be able to definitely make this as big as I want it, I think. I'm not worried about running out of yarn. I'll run out of a few of the colors, but I'll have plenty of a variety, I think, yet to make it large enough. I'm again using an H 5mm hook for this project. And here it is, another clover. Love them. And yeah, it's going really well. Such a fun project. I love granny squares. If you haven't already been able to tell that, they're so relaxing and mindless. So I've really enjoyed working on that. And I have it in this enormous basket that I got from a thrift store. My last work in progress I'm holding in this cute little bag that I got from Susie. She has an Etsy shop where she sells her sewing patterns, which are like quilt blocks like this. I will link to that. Tiny Toffee Designs, I think it's called. Anyway, this is super cute little paintbrush design. And I'm just making another dishcloth. So I've just started this one. It's just a itty bitty tiny one. I'm striping this one with 2 colors from my leftover scraps. Can't see anything, but it's just a light gray and a light yellow. I think this one's called, these are both from Knit Picks Dishy, and this is called Clarity, and this one's called Creme Brulee. So I'm going to just be striping those every 2 rows. I'll stripe. And again, I use US 6 4mm needles, and these are Knitter's Pride, I think, and they're wooden. Anyway, I only use these needles to make dishcloths. So they're just my dishcloth needles. yeah, like I said, it's just the perfect project to take with me. So I always keep a nail clipper in my project bag when I know I'm going to need to be cutting yarn, because it's just safer than a pair of scissors. It works really well, I think. Little tip, it cuts the yarn really well, and then if you ever need a clipper for a hangnail or something, you have it handy. So those are all of my works in progress. I think that is all I have to share with you this week. We've been doing really well. The weather has been super warm, but we've been having a lot of fun this summer. Our local public pool opened up, which was so surprising. We did go one day and it was super fun. I was so shocked that it opened up though, but we had fun. Anyway, I forgot to tell you guys last time I recorded that I had mentioned in probably episode 94 that we had found our first monarch caterpillar, and unfortunately that one did not survive. And then ever since then, we have been searching the milkweed around our property because we love to raise monarch caterpillars into butterflies. We did that for the first time last year and had so much fun doing it. But anyway, so that was like a month ago that we had found that first caterpillar, and we have been searching and we haven't been able to find any more caterpillars on the milkweed, which I think is so strange. We've seen a lot of monarch butterflies, and last year at this time we were already having our first hatching of butterflies. And so anyway, it was just so strange and kind of disheartening that we weren't finding any caterpillars. But anyway, we finally found some this morning. We went on a walk and we found this one milkweed plant that was just loaded with caterpillars. And in the past, I've only ever found one caterpillar on a milkweed plant. I've never found more than one caterpillar on one plant. This one had like, I think 5 caterpillars. They were all the same size, just super, like a 1/4 of an inch long. And then we found a few other, like 2 more plants that had a single monarch on them, or caterpillar on them as well. So we gathered them all up, and I'm so excited to finally have some in our little net so we can watch them grow. Oh, I'm so hopeful that we'll have some luck with these. The one that had multiple caterpillars on it, it was already going to flower, which I don't even remember the milkweed flowering last year. But again, I think we did this earlier in the year, maybe before it flowered, because I think we only did 1 round of the caterpillars, and I think there's at least 3 rounds in the summertime of the caterpillar or the monarchs laying eggs and then the caterpillars hatching and so forth. Anyway, so we did probably the first round, I guess, last year. So this is probably the second round. And anyway, that one that we found so many on, they were already eating on the flowering part of the milkweed, which I didn't even know that milkweed flowered. And anyway, I didn't know that they liked the flowers. I didn't know they ate the flowering part. And the flowers actually smell so beautiful. It's like a lilac smell. It's gorgeous. Anyway, we're so excited about that. Other than that, I can't think of anything that's new. Oh, I know what else is new. Super exciting. We have 5 kids. Only one of them has been able to ride a bike until this last week. 3 more of our kids learned how to ride a bike within 4 days. 2 of our kids learned how to ride a bike on the same day. And then a third of them, a third one learned how to ride his bike like 3 or 4 days later. So, oh my goodness, that is so exciting. I'm so proud of them. So we just have one child left who is actually our oldest, who hasn't gotten the hang of it yet, but he's trying now that all of his other siblings have learned. I think he's a bit more motivated to really try harder. We live out in the country, and so it is a bit harder to learn when you don't have a nice sidewalk or any kind of pavement to ride on. We have this little patch of pavement on the side of our house, and then we have a gravel drive. And so it is a bit trickier to learn, but I also grew up in the country and learned how to ride my bike quite late as a child as well. My children are following suit because my kids are aged 6 to 11. So, the 6-year-old's probably more average, I would guess. But my older kids are a little bit later in learning how to ride their bikes. But anyway, it is a bit trickier when you're not in town. In fact, the 2 that learned on the same day learned when we took them into town to a church parking lot that was empty and let them ride around on that pavement. And that's when 2 of them learned, was when they had the opportunity to ride on a smooth pavement area. So anyway, super, super exciting for our family to have so many kids learning how to ride their bike. So that's been fun. I think that's all I have to share with you this week. Thank you so much for joining me. If you enjoyed this podcast, please feel free to give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you would like. I would appreciate that so very much. I hope that you all are doing well, and I wish you the very best. Thanks again for watching. Bye.